Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at our inaugural quarterly UKVI update. Going forward, we hope to host these updates every quarter. I'm Saskia, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm the Client Services Director for Sable Education. Most of today's presentation will be hosted by Steve Paxton, the Managing Director of our Education Corporate Services Division. For some housekeeping, the recording, including all slides, will be shared after the call. So that will be shared to everyone that's on the call and everyone that is on our mailing list. So if you have colleagues that were unable to attend today and would like to have the content, then we will share that as a mailer. If you do have any specific questions after the call, you are, of course, always welcome to email us at se@sableinternational.com. Everyone will automatically be on mute with your cameras off. The presentation is expected to last about 45 minutes, and then there will be 15 minutes for questions and answers. If you've got a question while Steve's presenting, please feel free to post it in the chat. You can either post publicly or you can post privately. I'll then collate all the questions and we will go through those as a Q&A at the end. If there are any kind of case-specific questions or sensitive questions specific to an education provider, we might not have time to answer those on the call, but we will be sure to contact you afterwards to go through those answers. So in terms of what we're going to go through today, we'll talk through just the team, some sponsor license duties, overview of UKVI, e-visas, guardianship, agent vetting, and then the latest UKVI inspection highlights from some of the audits Steve's done in the last few weeks, and then the updated home office fees. So as I said, I'm Saskia, and Steve is on the call. And then for some of our wider team, you can probably see some names and faces that you will recognize. I won't go through everyone specifically, but at least you have everybody's details there. Then I will hand over to Steve.
Morning, everyone. Great to see the number that have joined us today. It's brilliant. Thanks, Sass, for that. I believe last week there was some other webinars and seminars, and all sorts of chaos broke out with questions about guardians and agents and all sorts of things. So just to fill you in, I did 3 audits in a row, not last week, the week before. So we'll catch up with that today just to update you with the latest info. And I think that the inspectors there are now my best friends, so who knows. So just to start off with, just to go around what the audit entails. I know most of you know this, but just so that you just get a reminder that that they hopefully arrive with 3 inspectors, a lead inspector, and then 2 other inspectors that would be doing documentary check. And they start straight away with those documentary checks. The lead inspector will be doing the interview with the authorizing officer and then the various different departments, while the other 2 are just getting stuck into looking at all your documents. And so these are the 5 sections, besides the authorizing officer, which always starts first, 45-minute interview with the authorizing officer. These are the 5 different areas that they will cover. I'm not going to go into depth of all of those because I think most of you have seen it. But just so that you're aware, when you do get these slides and you can listen back to the presentation, this is how they go through the inspection. So when we get to section 5, it's normally about 5 hours later, and we sort of breathe a sigh of relief because we know we're on the last stretch for there. So that's just for your information. We'll go through the actual latest highlights of the inspections in a couple of slides later. Thanks, Sass. Just an overview, just to remind you as to what's been happening with visas, because they've adapted the digitization of the immigration system now. So again, just to remind you, for all EU students, they need to register for an account, have a mobile biometric enrollment, that's they're doing their own selfies and those type of things, online application form they complete, they receive an e-visa, and then they come through the e-gates. They must more than likely come through the e-gates with the e-visa. Now, normally, just remember that non-EU gets a vignette, and they will still be getting an entry clearance vignette. but EU don't get it. So on the vignette is a 3-month window where they can come in between that 3-month window. With the Europeans, it'll just be on their e-visa. It'll say that this visa starts on this date. So there's no window for them to come in, but they must arrive in the country after the start date of that e-visa. Just remember, when you're looking for document proof of their entrance, and I found out that from a recent inspection that it's either an e-ticket you can get, a boarding pass, or, which I normally just throw away, is the baggage handling. You know, that the label that goes around your handle on your baggage. If they took a photograph of that, or if they still had that on their baggage, they will accept that because they've got their name and date and flight number, etc., on that. So that was something new I learned last week, that they do accept that as proof of entry into the country. For the non-EUs, obviously online application submission, they have to still go to a biometric appointment. They'll then get a entry clearance vignette with a 3-month window in that vignette. They must create an e-visa account, and then they'll be getting an e-visa, and this more than likely will be good to present to the border official. It should be in their passport when they scan their passport, and the microchips, and that should bring it up. But always safer to carry that e-visa with them just in case they have any other problems. So just remember, there's a little point at the bottom there, just to make sure, and we'll pick this up later on with the latest at UKVI inspections as to what they're looking for about entrance stamps, just to make sure we need to, you do get proof of when they enter the country. Thanks, Sass. So just a bit of background again to remind you, you must probably all know this, that the UK is transitioning to a total digital system, no more BRPs, and that's all the BRPs that expire 31st December, and they must create an online account. So just about every school that I've been to do audits, you've been spot on, and you've done it already during the last year, and by December, you already had all these in place. Some parents are a little bit of a problem area, and they don't want to give you the e-visa or the share code so that you can get that proof of immigration status. But just remember that come an inspection, you will need that, because they were checking those to make sure if there was a BRP, when it expired in December, can you show us the new e-visa, please? So they were doing that at the inspections. Entry of a student's BRP, it doesn't, the expiry of the BRP doesn't affect the immigration status now. It's just, it triggers the inspectors to look for the e-visa now, and no more BRP cards. And I think that's a big relief for schools, because now students can't lose them, and you don't need to get a new one and replace that, and it's costly and it's time consuming for staff to take them to new biometric appointments. So hopefully that's going to be a good thing going forward. But they are letting them travel, I think, till end of March, April, with the expired BRPs as proof. The Labour government brought that into play. Then just what action you need to do, just make sure that all the students have registered for an online account, and continue to register students for an account on the visa issuance. Get hold of the students and parents who haven't registered for the e-visa. That's urgent, but where I've been at schools, I think you've just about all done it. So if there are those one or two, just get on top of that as soon as possible, and just make sure that that share code is sent to you, because the check must be done by the school. It can't be done by the student or the agent or the parent. It must be done by the school, because that inspection, they check in the bottom paragraph for the bottom table at the bottom of that e-visa printout to see if you've done it, and to the date you've done it. So I'll get into that in a couple of slides time too. Yeah, as I mentioned before, that they can travel into the UK with the expired BRP cards. The Labour government says that the Conservatives were crazy making it 31st December, the expiry, because that's the busiest time to travel, etc., etc. So they've said they've given some months grace of that. So they should be all good to travel, and I don't think we haven't come across schools that have got that have had problems with students being stopped at border posts too much. There's one or two, but not the majority that we thought could be happening. Thanks, As. Okay, so then this could have caused some havoc in the last week or two by various companies giving you presentations and new guidance coming out recently. And so I think we just need more of a bit more of a common sense approach to this. And I spoke to the inspectors too, and they just said that's what they're looking for. But there has been instances where there's no guardian in place. The guardians have refused to come and do what they were supposed to be doing. Some of them were phoned up and said, you need to do this from the school. Please come and collect the student or whatever. And they said, I'm just a friend. I'm not a guardian. And if the student was contagious and they needed to leave the boarding house, and the one guardian said, well, I'm a friend of the family and I've got young kids, so they're not coming to my house. Thanks very much, and put the phone down. So this is what the Home Office is trying to stop, is those type of things happening. And you can imagine from a safeguarding perspective, now the student is worried because and their well-being is affected because they're worried. They don't want to, that no one wants them, for instance, to go to their homes, and they might transmit whatever they've got, measles or anything, to other borders. So they're just trying to look after the safeguarding and well-being of students. And obviously there are places out there where you wouldn't want your students going to for weekends or exits, etc. So yeah, from that, they're saying the guardianship responsibility is to ensure all arrangements for children suitable, which includes UK guardianship arrangements. This forms both the UKVI and national minimum standards. So we all know that because we won't pass ISI inspections or UKVI inspections if we don't have this in place. But just let's get down to the nitty gritty about the guardians. What sort of checks should you be putting in place? And some schools are saying, oh, the new guidance come out, so now we must only use Aegis or BSA approved guardians. The Home Office, I believe, don't want that to happen. They just want the checks to be done. And so at the audit, as I say, I've just did 3 in a row in 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we got used to what they were looking for. And they just want to make sure that there is, and you could have it in various forms. So parental consent for guardians. So the parents have signed that they are nominating this guardian. And the parents sign that that's who they want to nominate, and then the guardian signs it to say, yes, I accept being a guardian. And obviously in that form, it should be that I've read the guardian policy, the guardianship policy. And in that policy, you can have various things of whatever you're wanting. The one thing that they did look at, and what I had also put in place for the schools that I'd worked at a long time ago, when I was director of boarding, was to make sure that, for instance, if they're on travel, if their flights are cancelled and they have to stay overnight in a hotel, what's your procedure from a school perspective to make sure that that student is safeguarded and well-being? Because the airlines will put them up at a hotel overnight. Now, it's still your responsibility to look after that student and to make sure that they are safe and can't stay in a hotel overnight by themselves. A 17, 18-year-old student will be saying, yes, please, I'm not telling anyone. I'm very happy to stay in a hotel by myself. But you can't let that happen. It doesn't matter the age. It's they are sponsored students and they're your responsibility. So what is your procedure to make sure that happens? And so from that perspective, we put in place that they've got to contact the school checks flights are going, etc., etc. But also in the guardianship policy, it could be put in there that if the flights are cancelled, we expect you as a guardian to be going to the airport to collect them and take them to your home overnight until their flight for the next day or whenever their flight is scheduled for. that could be put in there. And most schools will want that rather than it's the school's responsibility to go and collect them from the airport and bring them back to school or stay in the hotel overnight to make sure the students are all fine, etc., etc. Now you're looking at a lot more staff hours and a lot more potential disruption. And I know a lot of teachers, their wheels are screeching when it's end of term and they are getting out of the schools. So you could put that in your guardian policy, and that's what they looked at the latest inspections. Was this in there? Because once the guardians have now signed that policy, they agree to whatever's in there, then you've got a document now you can fall back on and say, okay, well, you did sign this, so I'm sorry, you need to come and do the following. So that's what they're looking for. And then the checks. So if they are Aegis or BSA approved guardians, then you can say, okay, they've done their due diligence and those are approved guardians from there. And so from that perspective, that's okay. We had before a caseworker at Home Office issued a visa, approved a visa, we got a letter from them, the school got a letter, and we answered on the school's behalf. They said, can you just please tell us what due diligence you do on guardians for your boarding students? Do you do a criminal DBS check, for instance, on guardians? Please explain what you do. And so we wrote back on behalf of the school to say, if they're Aegis or BSA approved guardians, the due diligence is done there and they've been approved and checked. If they're not, if they fall in any other category, then us as a school, we are doing various things. So we're going to be checking their passport because we want to see, are they a British or Irish citizen? That's fine then. The passport will always also tell us their age. Now, the new guidance came out and said the minimum age for guardians is 18. Now, I wouldn't really want a 19-year-old looking after my 18-year-old sponsored student because I've got a feeling I know what they're going to be doing on weekends and those type of things, they're partying or whatever else. So you could, as a school, make in your policy that the age is 25. So that checking the passport would tell you the age of this potential guardian. And so then if they aren't British or Irish and they've got a foreign passport, then you will be looking for if they have got settled status, so indefinite leave to remain, settled status, etc., etc. So they have to have that to be able to be a guardian. And then I would ask the potential guardian for a utility bill to check that they are living at the address that they've given. That's a bit of proof. And then other schools do various other things. They phone them up just to meet them and then check on the first time a student has gone to their guardian, check when they come back, how was it okay, those type of things, and if you record all that. So as I say, we wrote back to the Home Office with, this is the procedure the school takes, and the next day the visa was approved. So I think that they are happy with those. And then also the distance, again, that they could be within 2 hours drive, 3 hours drive, but then you could say, Europeans could say, well, I'm in Paris, I can fly over here and I'll be with you within 3 hours. So my guardian's in Paris. And some, if you're at a Scottish school and the guardian lives in London, they can get on a plane and get up to Scotland within 3 hours or 4 hours. So again, distance, some say, has got to be within a 200-mile radius of the school. So it is hard to validate where. I know the guidance come out and says within 3 hours, the Home Office says. So again, 3 hours, what, by plane, by driving distance? So the Home Office inspectors didn't check that to a degree. They just wanted to know, could the guardian get there in time to look after the students from a safeguarding and well-being perspective. So those are the things that were checked. The new guidance has come out, obviously, and that's why I say the guidance also says 18 minimum. A bit of a trick one. Again, that's what the legal UKVI guidance is. But remember, whenever I come out and do audits with you guys, it's safeguarding supersedes all UKVI rules, and as I say, I would still stick to the 25, minimum 25. But you don't have to say, well, they have to be Aegis or BSA approved guardians now. So you could still utilize. And I know for Europeans and European agents, it could be quite tricky if you started saying that you had to use these guardianship agencies, because then it's more money and costs more. And then I think each agency comes out with different packages: gold, silver, bronze, platinum. I don't know the whole range of them, but what does a bronze do differently to a gold or platinum? Do they not come collect from airports? I don't know the different packages of guardianship. So those are the type of things, but this gives you a brief outline of what's expected. And if you follow those outlines that we've got on there, and you can prove that the parents have nominated this guardian, the guardians accepted it, and in there it says that they've read the guardian policy and they agree to follow that, and you've done your own checks, your due diligence, whether they be Aegis, BSA, or another category, then you will be fine. And so from that perspective, as long as they are they're on your database too. So if you're using RSAMs, they do also go and check. Please go to your core records, and then details of home address and those type of things, and they check if the guardian nominated there the same as what's nominated on the nomination form. So those are the checks that they're doing at an inspection, and that was 10 days ago, the latest. So again, I've got some coming up, and I can keep you updated again, and hopefully all of you are coming to our 22nd of May annual conference, where the inspectors, not the inspectors, but UKVI will be there. That'll be one of the questions maybe. And I would have done more, so I can update you, and more inspections, so I can update you the latest things there. So Saskia, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, Steve, there are some specific questions on guardians. I don't know if you want to cover those now or come back to them at the end. Would you like me to read them to you?
Yeah, if you can.
Sure. Is BSA accreditation acceptable just as Aegis accreditation is, i.e. can it be one or the other?
Yes.
Perfect. Latest guidance indicates that schools require a letter from the guardian. If we provide a form for the guardian to read and sign, would this suffice?
100%. And to say that they've read the guardian policy.
Do we have to complete DBS checks where they aren't Aegis approved? Example, family, friends. The new guidance.
Yeah, again, grey area, but the inspections we did, they didn't ask for DBS certificates because, one, it's illegal to keep someone's DBS certificate from there too. Same as your HR, they're not allowed to keep your staff DBS certificates. So they didn't ask that at all. The guidance does say it, but no, they didn't ask for DBS checks. And again, like I mentioned, they asked us, do we do criminal DBS checks for guardians, and we wrote back as to what the school does, and they approved the visa for the student. So yeah, a little bit of grey area, but I might be able to give you more information at an actual inspection going forward by May, hopefully.
Will our current pupils have to change guardian if their guardian has a temporary visa, example, skilled working visa, or is this only for any guardians appointed after the 29th of May?
No, it's current. So yeah, you can't have a guardian that's on a temporary one. That was prior to the new rules now. So yeah, it would be best to change ASAP.
Thank you. And then we employ a team of airport guardians at Birmingham and Heathrow to greet pupils on our main travel days to help with any issues, flight cancellations, etc. Is this sufficient?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, quite a big cost, but I can imagine. But yes, safeguarding always supersedes everything. So that's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely.
Katie, we do have a template guardianship policy, so we can definitely share that with you. And then what suffices as proof of settled status for non-British guardians?
So it'll be their visa. You'll have to ask them for their visa, and it must probably be, now it'll be an e-visa. They'll give you a share code more than likely, and then you can print it out, and it'll say indefinite leave to remain, or Europeans will have settled status, and there's various other categories. I mean, you can send it to us. It just can't be a visa that expires in 2 years' time or a year's time or whatever. So that category falls away. They must just have, and it should say on their EVs, it should say there's no time limit for this person stay in the UK. That's normally the key wording that you're looking for.
And then the last questions are just with, do we have to go out to all current pupils to check the new suitability is now met? And likewise, do we need to obtain letters of undertaking for all current pupils, not just those accepted after the 29th of May?
No, new guidance obviously only comes into play going forward. So it'll be for the new ones because they can't just bring it in retrospectively. But again, if you follow those basic guidelines for guardianships that we should have been doing all along, you will be fine. But only going forward from this new one, 100% definitely yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, was that it? Perfect. Then we get into the next section, which was also causing a bit of chaos, was agents. And so just on an agent sort of section is everybody's got to start somewhere. So you might come across a new agent that's never been in the game before. They've got to start somewhere. So, yeah, we suggest you give them a probationary 6-month contract to be reviewed after 6 months. They might not have given you a student or anything, but you've been working with them, and then renew it for another 6 months. And after the year, you can say we've assessed this whole year, and yes, we'll put you on an annual contract then onwards, and we'll monitor it annually, just like all your other contracts. You're not renewing them; you're just monitoring those contracts annually. And so that's what they want to see from the Home Office, that you're giving people a chance, obviously, because you might not be able to get any references in that, but you are being cautious and you're reviewing everything from there. Then on agents, to be checking annually. As I say, you might have an open-ended contract, but there's no end date to it, but you would review those contracts annually. And that's what we ask from you guys, is that can you please send us your list of your agents, or I think the team maybe asked you, please send your latest list of contracts between August and December every year to this email address at the Home Office. So that's what you just need to be doing after you've checked, reviewed their contracts. These are the ones you don't want to work with anymore. They're off. These are the new ones that have come in the last year, and we're happy with all the other existing ones. That you've got your template, and you should be working on that template according to the Home Office template that they sent out originally for 31st of August 2022, I think it was, and they sent an actual template. Please return this. So we've got that, and we should have sent it to all you guys to use as your template to use on. I mean, for day-to-day work, you don't need to use that template for your own day-to-day allocations and working. But when we report once a year, they need it in that format to be sent to them. And so that's where you're doing your checks. And then again, come inspections. Remember that I think BBSN has come out to say you only need to do us. We've got a letter from the Home Office that once you've got our checks, that's it. I think I just saw, and I'm trying to just search for it because I think I saw it, that Study Travel have also come out, a group, to say that they've also got a letter from the Home Office that their approved agents are okay to utilize as a reference. But my experience at inspections is that the inspectors will say, okay, please tell me who BBSN is. I have no clue, or BSA, I have no clue who this person is, that person. So we always say, and they're writing it down, these answers. Obviously, gets to your caseworker in Sheffield, they must probably know, okay, BBSN, they know who that is, and they know the accreditation they go through. But I'm always nervous at an inspection where the inspectors have no clue who that is. So what we normally just say is that, yes, for experienced agents that you're going to be working with, that they've got BBSN accreditation, which is great. But we also go to the BSA website and have a look to see if they're there, because the BSA print out all their accredited agents, or it's all there online, you can see. And you go onto the British Council website just to have a look if they've been accredited there. So now the Home Office can't tell if you've actually done that or if you haven't done that. There's no proof, and you don't need to have any other proof. But now you've gone and done 3 references in essence. You've got BBSN, which are accredited, but you've looked at 2 other areas. So that's the inspector on the day is very happy with that, because now you've got 3 sort of references. And some schools also ask for other schools, 1 or 2 from other schools, to see how those agents have worked. So the more you do, the better, obviously, but we don't want to create too much work, because I know you guys are flat out already trying to do everything else. And but that's the route that we would be saying that now, if I'm correct, and I'll get back to you on it, but I thought I saw study travel had been approved. So BBSN, you do those other checks for vetting or due diligence on those, the cross checks. And then coming for agents, they also want on the day, they want a list of your agents list, and then the students that are at school currently, which agent they are attached to. So just be aware, and that's quite easy. I believe at the inspections I've been to recently, they just pulled it off and put it onto the sheet on the day. Obviously, annually, when we send that agent spreadsheet to the Home Office, we don't put students' names on there, but come on inspection day, there'll be another column at the end with the students allocated to that agent. And some of yours might have come from word of mouth, etc., etc. The key thing is, and I always sort of hope that come an inspection, when you get asked, do you use sub-agents? And I'm hoping you say no. But if you don't, and there are sub-agents, then we just need to look at the contracts that you've got in place. So the contracts need to be saying, okay, we do use sub-agents, but we vet them ourselves, and we do the due diligence, and we are the overriding and sort of have responsibility for them. If your contract doesn't say that with that umbrella agency or the holding agency, then you're going to have to go out and do your due diligence on every sub-agent that they use, and have proof that you've done your due diligence on that. So a good answer is no. And if your main agent does use sub-agents, you say to them, you got to do your due diligence, and we are taking students from you. And if there's something that happens, you are going to be reported to the Home Office. We don't want to know about your sub-agents. You need to do your own due diligence. So those are your 2 answers. If you do say yes, we use sub-agents, then you've got to, as I say, go and do more due diligence. And the one question that was quite new, and well, it is new, tricked me a little bit there, was do any of your staff live abroad and work for you? So I don't know if some schools have staff that live in other countries just recruiting all the time, but they are employed by the home school here in the UK. That comes into a different category now, that we need to find out how that works and what that works, and what's the contracts in place between those staff, because those are could be classified as agents under that bracket. And so that's something else to just be aware of going forward. Sass, do you want to go through some questions that have come through here, or they're not?
Yeah, I think there's 2 questions that we can just answer that are specific to agents. So the one is, does this agent guidance apply even for agents which just recommend pupils to us but undertake no formal part in the selection and offer process?
Sorry, I just lost you there. Just say that again. Sorry, my bad.
No problem. Does this agent guidance apply even for agents which just recommend pupils to us but undertake no formal part in the selection and offer process?
And no, it's commission pay. So once you paid commission for them, then we're looking at being an agency. But if they're just referring and that, then no.
And then another question is, do UKVI ever investigate commission payments? Example, should we be keeping copies of agent invoices on file and dates of payments?
176 audits, not once ever checked that. So yeah, there's always a first, but no.
Perfect. And then the last one on agents. On reading the new guidance, it seems to intimate that pupils couldn't stay with their parents who are here on any kind of temporary visa. We sometimes have parents visit in the UK due to medical issues with their child or exam stress. The pupil will then stay with them as a day pupil or weekly boarder. We would then obtain an updated PCL, but the new guidance seemed to say that they can't do this. Please, could you clarify this?
Again, common sense, and that's got to be allowed, because that is the best safeguarding and well-being place for them to be with their parents in the UK. And so we've never come. I know the new guidance might be stating that to a degree, but that's as I've always said, safeguarding supersedes UKVI rules. And so PCL has been changed, so parents are given permission for this. Again, depending on the age of the student, it comes into there. But once medical, this is outside the normal things. If it's a medical issue or stress or something like that, then the best place for them to be is with their parents in the country. Obviously not for years and years on end, but it'll be a temporary solution to them.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve.
Cool. Next slide. Okay, so this is the latest stuff that's just come out. As I say, 10 days ago, my best buddies, the inspectors, and if you have around around 40, 50 sponsored students, sorry, that should say students, not agents, sponsored students, they will check every file. They did recently. And each file takes 8 to 10 minutes that they are checking. And I'm saying check files. So it's either paper copy, hopefully not. Please cross fingers that most of yours is online, electronic, but it could be either. You don't have to have one or the other. You could have both. They will be checking online. And as I said, it takes 8 to 10 minutes for each one to be complete. So roughly, if you're looking at 40 students, you're looking at 400 minutes. And I don't know what that is in hours, 60 into that, it's about 4 hours. And hopefully they don't bring one inspector, because then one inspector has to do all the interviews and then do 4 hours of checks. So it's going to be a long day. But that's what's happened. And so it normally takes around that time for them to go through everything. And the 8 to 10 minutes is checking all the Appendix D documents, plus guardians, plus agents, plus their home address, plus PCLs, the signatures, those type of things. That's what's taking 8 to 10 minutes from there. And their attendance. They check their attendance quite closely at the moment, but we'll get to that. Next slide. And next one is attendance. So from the attendance, it was very interesting. Normally, I have an A4 sheet with all the sponsored names of students on the left and their overall percentage on the right-hand side. And so that's from the start of academic year to the day before the inspectors arrived, what their total percentage is. Now, just before that, the lead inspector asks, can we see your attendance policy, please? Now, just about every school that I've been to doesn't have a UKVI paragraph in their attendance policy. What's in their attendance policy is for the local authority. So if they miss 10 consecutive days, or if they're missing 15 consecutive days, or whatever your local authority for every student, then you need to start doing certain things. And that's corresponding with the parents and the students and the local authority to say the students dropped below this, they've missed all of these things. So that works out to be about 90% on most of the policies that I've seen. Now, if that's all the only thing that's in your policy, and you haven't got a UKVI paragraph in your policy which states the 80% and the 10 consecutive days reporting, then they're going to use what's in your policy, and that's 90%. If that's what they've got for the missing 10 days at your local authority. Now that becomes a lot more work on the day, because if you're now using that percentage, because that's what your attendance policy says, and there's no UKVI paragraph, that means inspectors have to use that percentage. Then they go to the list that we produce and say, anybody that's below 90% now, we want to see what correspondence you've sent out and what reporting you've done. And now it becomes a whole lot more messy, because you haven't got the UKVI percentage of 80, which now captures a whole lot more students. And then the policy normally says if you use CPOMs or something similar to CPOMs, that if you use CPOMs, then it's reporting, and then they'll say, please, can you show us CPOMs? And the parents correspond. They won't read what you've written because that's obviously confidential and that, but they want to see that you have done what your policy says. So if we need to, we can get that paragraph into your attendance policy and the wording of it, just to cover that out, because then that takes out a load of students between the 90 and 80% mark that they won't check because it's in there, and they'll say, okay, we want to see what you do for anything below 80% now because you've got this paragraph in there. So quite a key one there, and that's a little thing, but takes up a lot of time. And then what they'll do from the attendance too, they don't believe the sheet we've got on the table, and they pick, if you've got 40 students, they'll pick 20 or 25 of them and say, please, when they're doing their documentary checks, they also go on to, if say, for instance, using RSAMs, they'll go on to registrations and then AM, PM registers and the time, date and all that, and they'll check the actual percentage on your system matches what we've given them on the sheet. So this is all within the 8 to 10 minutes of every student's file that they look at. One thing they also brought up is if you're doing an online interview, and if the student is 16 plus, do you make sure you clear the room? Not your room, obviously, the room where the student is sitting. No one must be in the room when you're interviewing them. And hopefully you just say, yes, of course we do that. They are now going a lot more into your DSL. They want to interview your DSL and the training of staff, how that's done, and they go through a whole lot of things on that. So do you use, what's the word I'm looking for? I think it's KIXI. And so do they all do that sort of test? Yeah, KCSIE. Do the training? Do they do the quiz? Do the staff do Annex A, where they work with children, or Annex B, where they're not working with children? Do they complete the course 1 on the website, the Prevent Awareness? These are the type of things that they're looking for. Does HR conduct that, or do you do it off yourself and then send it to HR? CPOMs, those type of things. And then they also ask the DSL sort of, and that comes into guardians and safeguarding, is when they go away for a weekend or an exit and they're staying at a guardian and they come back with a concern, what is your process that you have from that concern, and those type of things. So that was quite interesting. That's become a lot more, and HR has become a lot less staff checks. So attendance, we checked e-visa. Okay, so we touched base on this earlier on. So sometimes you get the share code, and you do the share code printouts that prove my immigration status, but you might do it only in September sometime. Now, as I said, at the bottom table on the e-visa, it's got, did the school do the check and the date that you did the check. Now, then they straight away, during these 8 to 10 minutes, they say, can you show us the enrollment date of the student? And they'll check the enrollment date. Okay, it was 4th of September, but you did your share code check on the 8th of September. That can't happen, because how did you know that the student had the right to study check for those 4 days? So your right to study check must be done. So the share code print must get to you, must get the share code and do that prove my immigration status before the students start, because that's what they're checking. And theoretically, that's a breach, and quite a big breach, because you haven't checked that they've got the right to study with you when they started on the first day of term. So make sure you do your right to study checks always before they arrive. Do your CAS exports, please, because whenever I come in to do an audit now, we're doing the CAS export, and one half of the Home Office will change it to being withdrawn maybe, and the other half, where the inspectors take a printout on the CAS export side, they haven't changed the CAS status, where it still says used, it doesn't say withdrawn. And so they're using that number to come to you and say, we've got 100 students, we think you've got 100 students, meanwhile you've got 78, and now there's a big problem. So do your CAS export check. We do it for you termly, I think we do, or twice a year, and we'll send it to you and just check that they have been withdrawn and sorted out from there. And if a CAS is expired, so CAS doesn't get used for, and after 6 months the CAS will expire, that needs to be reported as a withdrawn and non-enrollment. I said to them, we didn't use the CAS. No one came. No one started anything. No, you've got to report, withdraw the CAS and tell them that they didn't enroll. I said, oh, okay. So anyway, that's what we need to do. We can't have expired CAS there. We need to have reporting attached to that expired CAS. So, yeah, sorry. But we work through all these things with you. Private foster care, the inspectors had a little internal argument, and they said that their office is having an internal argument because is the 28 days consecutive or accumulative? So I said, well, we've always gone that it's consecutive. Even during COVID, we used, when they're staying for someone for longer than 28 days, then that becomes private foster care. And they said, yeah, no, 3/4 of the office thinks that, but there's no wording, actual wording that says it's consecutive or cumulative. So we suggest if over the year you monitor it and it goes over 28 days, then you do reporting. I said, oh my goodness, now you're really getting everybody to work double the time. So they said, no, you're not going to have any problems if you don't. So that's just something we're working on, and that's one of the questions again we'll be bringing up in May. We need to know what we need to be doing, because we don't want to have any breaches at any inspection. But how we're going at the moment, we're absolutely fine. So don't worry and don't panic about that. If you've got a student visa, not a child student visa, a student visa, they need to see the IELTS results. They would want to see that check that you've done and the result and the certificate that you've got. If you withdraw a student, that you must keep the documents for 1 year, 12 months after that date of withdrawal that the student's gone. Agent spreadsheet plus current students. Okay, we went through that already. HR, they want to see single central register plus a safer recruitment staff. Can you give us a list of your safer recruitment staff, please? And how do you train them and how do they get to that position? And then a sponsor student list. They have asked 3 times in 3 inspections, can we get a breakdown of your students by age group and year group? Cool. Sorry, that was quick, and I know I might be running out of time. Do we have any questions there, Seth?
There's a few questions. So one of them is, how much checking is there on non-sponsored children who are in the UK on a parental or dependent visa? What should we be doing with these?
They check. Those are about 6 minutes per file, and they're doing. If you have 20 subject to immigration control students, what we call them SIC, subject to immigration control, they will take 50% of those. So if you've got 20, they'll take 10, and they will be checking for 2 things: their passport, and they'll check their visa. And then if their visa says dependent, then they will be wanting to see the dependents' visas and passports, and that you followed that trail. So you should have a template of ours where the spreadsheet says, have you collected all these documents? That gives you that, but they'll spend 4 to 5 minutes on every subject to immigration control file. Because there's not all the Appendix D to do check in that, they're checking theoretically for 2 documents, but maybe more if needed. So yes, they do check thoroughly those, because the sponsored ones they know about. Subject to immigration control, they're a bit wary.
Okay, the next question is, do you have suggested wording for UKVI mention in attendance policy, please?
Did you say, sorry, the wording for the attendance policy UKVI?
Yes.
Yep, we'll get that through to you, because it's very simple, and it's just sort of a 2-liner, but it's in there, and you put it in there and we're good to go.
Perfect. And then under the new guidance, does a day pupil living with a close relative need a separate guardian in the UK?
A day pupil living with a?
So a day pupil living with a close relative need a separate guardian in the UK?
No.
Perfect. I think
I've just seen one, sorry, that was quite interesting. I had a student who left 2 years ago, and the UKVI asked last summer for me to produce a copy of the e-ticket and boarding pass. Yeah, so they're also asking, can you give us that for when the student left you and prove that they landed in their home country? You're not going to get those things. The students left and they're not going to give you, yes, I'm home, thanks very much, here's my boarding pass. So we try as best we can. It's just it's taken them 2 years to get to try and check these things. And yeah, they said to us at inspection, you've got to keep it for 12 months, 1 year. So yeah, we always try and accommodate that type of question. But if we went back and said, sorry, it's 2 years ago, then they can't really do too much.
And then last question on this, BNO child in the UK alone, do you need to have copies of the BNO visas for the parents?
No, it'll say BNO dependent, then you need the parents. But otherwise, if they BNO standalone, then they'll be fine. They don't need it.
Perfect.
But
Thank
also,
you,
there's two other categories. There's two other categories. Diplomats, if you have diplomatic students, diplomatic and international military students. If you've got those two categories, you'll get those visas. Sometimes on international military, you won't get a visa. You'll get their orders, and it says that these dependents can stay with us. It's all fine, but you must write an email back to those two categories to say that we are, please let us know immediately if you change your immigration status, because a lot of international military stay in the UK, but they come out the military and they become a skilled worker or something like that. So as long as you've got an email right up front to say, thanks very much for this, but please going forward, can you give us immediately that you change immigration status? Right, so then unbelievably, they've increased the fees again, UKVI fees from 9th of April. And so the CAS has now gone 25 to 55. That's the biggest jump in all these ones. So that's not nice, but nothing we can do about it. And the actual visa fee goes from 490 to 524. For your HR departments, obviously the costs will go from that's more than doubled, and the skilled worker visa will increase not that much, but from 827 to 885. So, like SAS has mentioned here, ideally assign a CAS prior to the fee hike, which is 9th of April. So, if you know your September starters, get us those ASAP so we can get this done. If you're recharging to parents, your compliance management fee or recharge, adjust that for this next year, because otherwise you might not be cost neutral to the school just because of that extra 25 to 55 pounds, etc. Yeah, just get them to apply now for the September starters, just because it'll save them a little bit of money. That's everything I think from my side there. I just don't know. Is international military non-British forces? Yes. IELTS. So sorry, I did mention on the student visas for if they do an IELTS, but obviously a student visa they could have completed their GCSEs. So then you just need proof of that they've got their GCSE. I think it's English Lit or English Language, and the specific 6 or above that they've got for GCSEs. AMP, yeah, Tim, use that AMP. I don't know about priority and super priority SAS. Has that
they haven't
gone up?
increased. No.
Okay. I think, I don't know if you can see any others out there, or if there's anything else.
Any other questions or anyone that we've missed? If there were specific questions, we will contact you afterwards. And I have made a note, we will send our template guardianship agreement and our template agency agreement and the UKVI wording. Please don't use those verbatim, but it does give you an idea of some of the criteria. Well, thanks everyone for your time today. A recording of this webinar will be circulated along with the slides, and then we will include those template documents as well. And if there are any further questions, please feel free to reach out to Steve or myself or the team, and we'll be more than happy to answer those for you. But thank you all very much for joining us, and hope you have a really good day.